guys to my first ever episode of Halloween month. Yes, it's October, one of my favorite months in movies because horror movies. I love horror movies. I love getting scared. I love getting invested. Horror movies is one of my favorite genres of movies, and most films that I've been doing in like competitions and stuff are mostly horror films. That's how much I love horror movies. So, we gotta review some horror movies. There are gonna be a couple of new movies that are coming on demand this month, but of course, there's not gonna be much new releases since, the pandemic is happening. So, let's review just some of my favorite horror films because there's a lot more horror movies that I love. So, hopefully, you guys enjoyed my previous reviews in the past, like Jaws, Halloween, Evil Dead 1, The Exorcist. Most of these horror movies I reviewed, but now this is a month where I'm gonna be just talking about horror films. This is going to get excited because we are going to go from horror films from the 60s, from the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. We're going to go from different orders of release dates of which horror movies I love from that time limit. And of course, the first review, we're going to talk about a classic. Of course, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Now, since Psycho is filmed in black and white, let's make this review in black and white. Yeah! Haven't done this since my Roma review. So Psycho is directed by one of the most revolutionary directors out there that we all know, Alfred Hitchcock. Most of his films he's done are, of course, fantastic. The Birds, Rear Window, love those films. In my opinion, the one I'm not a fan of that everyone says is one of the greatest movies of all time is Vertigo. I know, dislike the comments, but in my opinion, I'm not a fan of that movie. I don't know, there's something about that movie that I did not like. But Alfred Hitchcock did a great job directing that movie. It's just not my cup of tea. But The Birds, Rear Window, and especially Psycho is what makes Alfred Hitchcock one of the most influential directors out there. And Psycho is definitely one of the most influential horror films that came out. When this movie came out in the 60s, after people watching this film, people were mind blown. People were scared of the film. It's one of those horror films that definitely brings up iconicness to its genre. I think Psycho still holds up till this day. This movie came out in the 60s. And usually with old films, there could be some scenes I'm like, okay, this definitely doesn't hold up to this year. Psycho, everything about Psycho still holds up. I recently watched it on Blu-ray and it's a great Blu-ray. The whole movie, I was still invested in. Psycho turns out as, of course, one of my favorite horror films of all time and one of my favorite classical films as well. So if you guys have not seen Psycho, seriously, come on. The iconic shower scene. You guys haven't heard about that scene? Seriously, have you guys been living under a rock? Like throughout the previous years, or at least in the 60s? But anyway, I will be talking about some spoilers in the film. So if you have not seen Psycho, watch this freaking film. Because this film is one of the most influential horror films that still came out till this day. So basically the story of this movie is about Maureen Kane, played by Janet Leigh, who in fact is Jamie Lee Curtis's mother. Research that up. After she stole some money from her employer, she runs away from her town and she finds this random hotel after a storm in the middle of nowhere known as Bates Motel, where it lives by an owner named Norman Bates and his serial killer mother. Let's talk about the marketing of Psycho, because the marketing of Psycho was actually very, very interesting, where you don't see the footages of the movie from the trailers. All you see is a 6-minute video of Alfred Hitchcock himself touring around the set of the movie, showing us the Bates Motel, telling us what the movie is officially about.
This motel also has, as an adjunct, an old house, which is, if I may say so, a little more sinister looking, less innocent than the motel itself. And in this house, the most dire, horrible events took place.
And he made us follow these 2 strict rules. 1, do not be late. You need to watch this movie from the very, very beginning. If you're late, you can't see this movie. 2nd rule, you cannot reveal the ending. You cannot reveal what's happening in the movie. You cannot reveal the twist ending, which, I'm sorry Alfred Hitchcock, I'm going to spoil that in this review. And that's like how inspired Alfred Hitchcock is in this film. He is so passionate from this project. If you've seen the movie 2013's Hitchcock with Anthony Hopkins, who's done a great job portraying him, it's a movie about how passionate Alfred Hitchcock is throughout this book adaptation. Because yes, Psycho is actually based on a book. And he is so invested in the book and he wants to make that into a movie and people say it's impossible. But Alfred Hitchcock made that possible in this entire film, and turns out to be one of the greatest horror films that ever existed. The first time I watched Psycho, I was at school. I was at a media class, and they were showing us Vertigo, which, like I said before, it wasn't that great in my opinion, and Psycho, which I loved, because the film was so investing from beginning to end. I'm just like, this movie came out in the 60s, and still holds up till this day? Wow. Let's talk about Anthony Perkins as one of the best serial killers still till this day, Norman Bates. Now, this is the character that is not like any other serial killers in movies. They're not like serial killers that wear masks and hold knives and just killing people. Norman Bates is actually a person. When you first introduced to Norman Bates in the film, he's a very charming, likable guy, and his chemistry between Marone was actually really, really good in the film. And you see him and you're like, he's a very likable guy. Where's he going to go through the story? He talks about his troubled mother, and you just feel sorry for the guy, and he makes him a very likable character. And then, throughout this movie, he changes, and it changes our perspective, which is what I love about this movie, the way they treat Norman Bates in this film, because this is the way that Alfred Hitchcock wanted it. They want us to like the character at first, and then when he does some really dark shit in the film, of course, we change our minds around him. It kind of reminds me of Joker, where Arthur Fleck, you feel sorry about his disease and stuff, and then he turns evil at the end when he shot Robert De Niro in the film. I feel like Psycho is like that. You like Norman Bates at first, and then you're just thinking, oh yeah, he's a serial killer. Yep. Why did we like this character? We feel so regretted, and that's what I love about it. They just made this character so different between the entire movie. And Anthony Perkins' performance in this film was fantastic. Also, Janet Leigh as Marone, the main character in this film, was also very, very good in this film. She plays a woman that you really feel intense throughout the entire film. Like, from the start of the film, before the base motel scene, she's been chased by the cops, she feels like she's been watched and followed, and you feel scared with her. Like, yeah, she did a really risky thing, stealing money from her employer. And, of course, those scenes are very, very intense in the movie. And that's the thing about Alfred Hitchcock did so well in this film, is intensity. Because you don't see Bates Motel until like 30 minutes of the movie. You see more of what the film is going to be, a suspenseful thriller film with his amazing score with the car scene.
Heck, officer, that was the first time I ever saw the customer high pressure the salesman.
Yes, that score right there is amazing. But of course we're going to talk about the real theme of this movie later on. But Alfred Hitchcock did a really great job, still to this day, directing this movie, making it so intense and still thrilling to this day. And again, this movie came out in the 60s and still holds up with his direction. But of course, we cannot talk about Psycho without one of the most iconic scenes put into horror movies, or I'll say put into film, the shower scene. That scene is definitely a well-known scene, and everyone always makes fun of that scene. The way the shower scene was actually filmed is one of the most important film scenes in movies. They even made a documentary about that scene. That's how important it was. Literally, this scene still terrifies me, makes me not want to go in the shower because it still scares me. That whole theme, wow, the theme of this movie is one of the most iconic horror movie themes ever, where everyone just grabs a knife and go, and you don't even see much violence in that scene. You just hear the violence, and you just have a little bit of cut shots here and there. And I thought that is fantastic filmmaking. And throughout the entire shower scene, and when Norman Bates discovers the body and puts it in the river, that whole scene is fantastic filmmaking. Like, wow. That shower scene is one of the most iconic scenes put into film. And of course, the main character of the film, something that we haven't got in a long time, or at least I remember a film that did that, the main character gets killed halfway through the film. So you're like, what's going to happen in the second act? But the second act introduces to Marone's sister in the film, solving this mystery of where her sister is and Bates Motel and all that stuff. And I love that intense scene with the detective going to Norman Bates' hotel, talking to him about what happened, and holy shit, that scene is still intense. I was literally gutting my popcorn throughout the entire film. I was so on the edge of the seat still today. Literally, again, this film came out in the 60s and it still made me go on the edge of my seat. And of course, I'm sorry Alfred Hitchcock, but I'm going to break the second rule, reveal the twist in the film. The truth about Mother scene wow, where you see Leela Crane discovering Mother, her body. It's crazy that Norman Bates is actually a serial killer the entire time. Because we hear Norman Bates basically talking about his mother, how crazy she is, and it's just like, you think the mother is a serial killer, but no, we find out it's him, and it's like, wow, one of the best twists put into film. If this film was still made today, everyone would say, oh, this is gonna happen. It's so obvious, but throughout the 60s, no one knows. So that whole twist in the film where you see the chorus and that lighting, wow, where you see the lighting just swinging through the chorus, it makes it so freaking creepy. It's one of the best lightings I've ever seen in a film. It's one of the most creepiest scenes that I've ever seen in a horror film today. It still made me, I would say, jump. Because of the way Alfred Hitchcock filmed that scene. It's so intense, it's so thrilling, and again with that music, wow. Guys, Psycho, of course, it's a classic. You cannot deny that Psycho is one of the most influential horror films that came out today. It turns out to be one of my favorite horror films. It's a horror film that I'll always enjoy watching on October. The story is great. Norman Bates is one of the best serial killers put into film. The performances are great. The score is great. Alfred Hitchcock filmed this movie really, really well. Guys, if you have not seen Psycho, seriously, have you been living under a rock? So guys, that is my review for Psycho, and this is my first review for Halloween month. Let me know what you think of Psycho if you have seen it, because I think everyone has seen Psycho. Let me know in the comments below if you like the movie, hate the movie, or you thought it's okay. Make sure you guys follow me on social media links down below. Facebook, Stardust, Instagram, Twitter. Keep contacting me, and make sure you guys subscribe to my channel, notified for my latest reviews, and have a nice day.
They'll see and they'll know, and they'll say, why, she wouldn't even harm a fly.